So, folks, I was prepping the show as I do, and I was going through conservative channels because I wanted to see what all was out there. It's Monday, beginning of a new week. I want to see maybe some of the big takes, the hot takes from the conservosphere that I might want to handle at some point. And of course, I checked Matt Walsh's channel because while I find him relatively boorish, sometimes he has content that I feel compelled to respond to. And honestly, I found what I think is perhaps his most heinous take yet, which is saying a lot. This is the worst of the worst gutter racist at the Daily Wire. And, he's about to live up to that completely. However racist you think Matt Walsh is, he's more racist than that. Let's just dive in, shall we?
I mean, that's the whole point here, that, seeing through this kind of propaganda isn't easy when the propaganda was written more than 70 years ago, but we should try anyway, just to see what we might find out. Again, they're lying blatantly to our faces about events that we all experienced, and that in most cases were caught on video for the whole world to see. If they can and do lie about those sorts of things, imagine what kind of lies they can tell about events that none of us experienced with no videos to go back and check to confirm the record.
Now, I do want people to wonder here, who's this they? Who's the they that he keeps referencing, right? Like, by they who? Who is going back through history and shaping it into a devious shape so that no one realizes the true history, right? Who's the they? Let's dive further in.
Consider every supposed racist atrocity from decades or centuries ago, every quote-unquote innocent minority wrongfully persecuted by racist whites. I'm not saying that all of those stories aren't true. I'm saying that you can't assume that they are true. You have to go back with a skeptical eye, willing to question even the narratives that are most taken for granted, indeed, especially those narratives. So let's go through a couple of examples now. Let's begin that process today. And let's start with the killing of a 14-year-old black boy named Emmett Till. Now, there's a good chance that you've almost certainly heard of Emmett Till, as the writer
Yeah, that's right. This entire segment from Matt Walsh is about how you've been lied to about Emmett Till. About how, in actuality, maybe Emmett Till had it coming. And it made me so fucking mad that we had to talk about it. So, again, strap in, fucks. I wanted to say folks. I was so mad I said fucks. I apologize.
Steve Saylor has pointed out, he's not just a fixture in high school history textbooks. He was also center stage during the BLM hysteria of the past few years. Quote, Emmett Till, who was murdered in 1950.
I'm sorry. The idea that a murdered 14-year-old was center stage during BLM. Yeah, because we're talking about a kid who was lynched, who was murdered for no fucking reason. Kind of like how cops sometimes have murdered people for no fucking reason, including murdered kids for no fucking reason. Including how in America, there are cases where, a teenager in a hoodie who's walking around in the evening time in the dark because he wanted to go to the gas station to get some Skittles, gets tracked down and killed by a vigilante. Yeah, there's a reason we keep bringing up Emmett Till. It's because, unfortunately, it's still relevant.
55 has been mentioned in 427 different New York Times articles over just the last 10 years. Emmett Till was mentioned more often in American books in 2022 than in any previous year. So as far as enduring myths go, Emmett Till is certainly up there. The basic narrative, which you've probably been
enduring myths. Fuck you.
Told in school and by the media, is that Till was abducted and lynched by racist white people in Mississippi back in 1955. His crime allegedly was just simply whistling at a pretty white woman in a grocery store.
Now, I want you to keep in mind, this is what Matt Walsh is saying. This is the dominant narrative from them. And he I have watched this, okay? He doesn't really ever disagree with this narrative per se, but he just proceeds to be incredibly, incredibly racist and gross about it.
Her name was Carolyn Bryant Donham. That was a serious violation of racial codes at the time, so Bryant, who was very offended, lied to her family and told them that Emmett Till had groped her. This is the story. And in response, Bryant's husband and his half-brother hunted the boy down a few days later, abducted him from a cabin, and brutally lynched him. The story was a major catalyst for the civil rights movement. Many decades later, in her 70s, Bryant admitted that she had lied about Emmett Till. Black activists then demanded that prosecutors charge her with a crime, and ultimately Bryant died before they could get their vengeance. That is the official narrative. A few years ago...
The official narrative from them. Notice he hasn't really listed who they are yet. And honestly, I think he's kind of not going to. He just kind of leaves it as a vague them on purpose because y'all know Matt Walsh loves a vague them. Yeah.
Bryant passed away. CBS News repeated this version of events verbatim on air. Watch.
Carolyn Bryant Donham, the white woman who accused Emmett Till of making advances towards her, has died. 14-year-old Emmett Till was kidnapped and brutally murdered by Bryant's then-husband and his half-brother in Mississippi in 1955 over the allegation. The two men were acquitted in his killing by an all-white jury, but later confessed in an interview. The case gained national attention after Emmett Till's mother allowed Jet magazine to take and publish photos of her son's mutilated body in an open casket. The horrific image shocked the nation and served as the catalyst for the civil rights movement. Years after Till's death, Donham admitted to fabricating parts of her story, although she was never charged with a crime.
Now, the problem here is that virtually every aspect of what that anchor just said is a fabrication. First of all, Emmett Till was not accused of merely making advances towards Bryant. That's an extremely, I guess we would say, sanitized and deliberately misleading way to present the story. According to Bryant's testimony in court, as well as her memoir, Emmett Till grabbed her hand and said, "How about a date, baby?" And when she tried to flee, Emmett Till followed her to the cash register, forcefully grabbed her waist and said, "What's the matter, baby? Can't you take it?" He told her she didn't need to be afraid and explained, quote, "I've been with white women before." Emmett Till did not leave the store until one of his friends entered and forcefully removed him.
I want you all to understand what Matt Walsh is doing here, which is basically to say Emmett Till had it coming. He's just saying Emmett Till had it coming. Now, what's interesting here is that Matt Walsh is about to say, oh, well, the confession that she had made it all up isn't, we can't really rely on that. We have to throw it all out because the journalist who got that confession, well, he didn't release the tape of the confession, and thus we can't believe it at all, and it must have been fabricated. Anyway, here is a clip from Duke University where Tim Tyson recalls hearing that confession.
I can't read her mind. I don't have any way of knowing what her motivations were. So it's a difficult question to answer. I don't really know why. I can speculate. She was getting older, in poor health. Maybe she wanted to tell her story for posterity. But that's pure speculation. I don't pretend to know her mind or her heart. I was surprised by the revelation, and but not shocked. Not shocked. We were having what seemed a candid conversation, and that was a moment of deep candor. And but I don't know what drove her in that direction. She said you tell these stories over and over until they seem true, but that part's not true. Meaning the physical, sexual, menacing kind of assault on her by Emmett Till that she had testified in court about. But the staunchest thing she said, and I think that nobody could question really, is she said nothing that boy did could ever justify what happened to him. So, I don't know. When I'm doing oral histories, I'm not looking to judge the people I'm interviewing. I'm not looking to change the people I'm interviewing. I'm looking to make sure that the tape recorder is running. I'm there to try to encourage them to tell their truth, not to create it myself by badgering them in some direction that I want them to go, but to encourage them to tell their truth and share their memories. And so when things like that come up, she's not actually I had somebody tell me about committing a racial murder in great detail. The first interview I ever did, in fact. And, as a historian, what I'm feeling is, sort of the eagerness to hear and to learn and to record, to document that story more than I am any kind of moral outrage. My moral outrage at the lynching of Emmett Till couldn't be any deeper. But my job is to ferret out the truth as best I can. History's impossible because you're trying to recreate the past, and the past is gone. But of course, it also lives in us and around us, and so we do this impossible work because it's important, and that's what I have my mind on when I'm interviewing people and when I'm doing research. I'm looking for telling fact. I'm looking for important revelation. I'm looking for things that give us insight into how that foreign country called the past works.
The argument here, he just did, he's just making it up. I don't think he's fucking making it up. Number one, because he's insanely consistent throughout his work. But also number two, because of a few other things. For example, Matt Walsh is she testified to this at trial, so it must be true. There were other testimonies given at the trial. Those testimonies included the testimony of Emmett Till's cousin, who testified that Emmett Till was in that store for less than a minute and couldn't have possibly done the things that were alleged he did. So, again, Matt Walsh is deliberately here misrepresenting the totality of the facts involved, right? Not only that, the FBI also investigated this, and in the FBI's own investigation did not come across the allegations of Emmett Till ever touching her. So, Matt Walsh is leaving out a fuck ton of information here in an effort to smear a child who was brutally murdered 80 years ago, 1955. I guess 70 years ago, 71 years ago. It's deeply, deeply grotesque and sick. But it seems to be the thing that he's now hanging his hat on as for his channel with his real histories that are basically just what white nationalists and white supremacists think about history, doing his best to use pseudoscience to justify them. And it's truly terrible. It's just truly awful. Because I want to bring your attention to something else, right? Where he mentions in this, groped
her. This is the story. And in response, Bryant's husband and his half-brother hunted the boy down a few days later, abducted him from a cabin, and brutally lynched him. The story was a major catalyst for the civil rights movement. Many decades later, in her 70s, Bryant admitted that she had lied about Emmett Till.
Now, what's interesting here is that in his retelling of the events, but not in the telling of the events from the from this part.
Rights movement. Years after Till's death, Dunham admitted to fabricating national attention after brutally murdered by Bryant's then husband and his half-brother in Mississippi in 1955 over the allegation. The two men were acquitted in his killing by an all-white jury.
That part is left out of Matt Walsh's retelling, right? The part about Emmett Till's killers getting acquitted by the jury in the case. Now, what is very interesting and necessary is the subsequent part here, right?
But later confessed in an interview.
Now, you'd be forgiven if you're like, oh, well, they confessed, etc. But like, you can read the interview. You can go and find the issue of Look magazine where they published the interview with these two guys. And it is not subtle at all about what happened. The shocking story of a proved killing in Mississippi. It even has a horrific drawing attached to it. Illustration. And you can read this. It was published in 1956. Less than a year after the killing. Disclosed here is the true account of the slaying in Mississippi of a Negro youth named Emmett Till. Last September in Summer, Mississippi, a petit jury found the youth's submitted abductors not guilty of murder. In November, in Greenwood, a grand jury declined to indict them for kidnapping. Of the murder trial, the Memphis Commercial Appeal said evidence necessary for the convicting on a murder charge was lacking. But with truth absent, hypocrisy and myth have flourished. Now hypocrisy can be exposed, myth dispelled. Here are the facts. Carolyn Holloway Bryant is 21, 5 feet tall, weighs 103 pounds, an Irish girl with black hair and black eyes. She is a small farmer's daughter who, at 17, quit high school at Indianola, Mississippi, to marry a soldier, Roy Bryant, then 20, now 24. The couple have two boys, 3 and 2, and they operate a store at a dusty crossroads called Money. Post office, filling station, and 3 stores clustered around a school and a gym, and set in the vast, lonely cotton patch that is the Mississippi Delta. Carolyn and Roy Bryant are poor, no car, no TV. They live in the back of the store, which Roy's brothers helped set up when he got out of the 82nd Airborne in 1953. They sell snuff and flatback to Negro field hands on credit, and they earn little because, for one reason, the government has begun giving Negroes food they formerly bought. Carolyn and Roy Bryant's social life is visits to their families, to the Baptist church, and whenever they can borrow a car, to a drive-in with the kids sleeping in the back seat. They call Shane the best picture they ever saw. For extra money, Carolyn tends store when Roy works outside, like truck driving for a brother. And he has many brothers. His mother has had 2 husbands, 11 children. The first 5, all boys, were Millam children. The next 6, 3 boys, 3 girls, were Bryant children. This is a lusty and devoted clan. They work, fight, vote, and play as a family. The half in their fraternity is forgotten. For years, they've operated a chain of cotton field stores as well as trucks and mechanical cotton pickers. In relation to the Negroes, they are somewhat like white traders in portions of Africa today, and they are determined to resist the revolt of colored men against white rule. Like, this is not subtle. Like, this is in 1956. They're basically like, yeah, they are devoted white supremacists, right? Like they're like, we really don't want those black people getting ideas because we're top dog in town. Like, they were profiteering off of sharecropping families in the fields. Like, it's pretty gross. Just, it's gross economically. It's also gross because ideologically they track a superiority to the people they sell to, right? But it obviously gets worse. On Wednesday evening, August 24th, 1955, Roy was in Texas on a brother's truck. He had carted shrimp from New Orleans to San Antonio, proceeded to Brownsville. Carolyn was alone in the store, but back in the living quarters was her sister-in-law, Juanita Millam, 27, with her own 2 small sons and Carolyn's 2. The store was kept open until 9 on weeknights, 11 on Saturday. When her husband was away, Carolyn Bryant never slept in the store, never stayed there alone after dark. Moreover, in the Delta, no white women or group of white women ever travels country roads after dark unattended by a man. This meant that during Roy's absences, particularly since he had no car, there was family inconvenience. Each afternoon, a sister-in-law arrived to stay with Carolyn until closing time. Then the 2 women, with their children, waited for the brother-in-law to convoy them to his home. Next morning, the sister-in-law drove Carolyn back. Juanita Millam had driven from her home in Glendora. She had parked in front of the store and to the left, and under the front seat of this car was Roy Bryant's pistol, a .38 Colt automatic. Carolyn knew it was there. After 9, Juanita's husband, J.W. Millam, would arrive in his pickup to shepherd them to his home for the night. About 7:30 p.m., 8 young Negroes, 7 boys and a girl, in a 46 Ford had stopped outside. They included sons, grandsons, and a nephew of Moses, preacher Wright, 64, a sharecropper. They were between 13 and 19 years old. 4 were natives to the Delta, and others, including the nephew Emmett, Bobo, Till, were visiting from the Chicago area. Bobo Till was 14 years old, born on July 25th, 1941. He was stocky, muscular, weighing about 160, 5'4" or 5. Preacher later testified he looked like a man. Bobo's party joined a dozen other young Negroes, including 2 other girls, in front of the store. Bryant had built checkerboards there. Some were playing checkers, others were wrestling and kidding about girls. Bobo bragged about his white girl. He showed the boys a picture of a white girl in his wallet, and to their jeers of disbelief, he boasted of his success with her. "You talkin' mighty big, Bo," one youth said. "There's a pretty little white woman in the store. Since you know how to handle white girls, let's see you go in and get a date with her." "You ain't chicken, are you, Bo?" another youth taunted him. Bobo had to fire or fall back. He entered the store alone, stopped at the candy case. Carolyn was behind the counter. Right? So I want to really hammer home here that what is happening in this account is what was recorded and told to the interviewer from the men who murdered Emmett Till. This is the narrative of the murderers who went out of their way to lynch a 14-year-old boy. Just to be perfectly clear, this is what Matt Walsh is basing his critique on. But I'm going to skip a section of this here. Roy dressed, brought a gun. This one was a .45 Colt. Both men were and remained cold sober. Big Millam had drunk a beer at Minter City around 9. Roy had had nothing. There was no moon, and they drove to Preacher's house, 2.8 miles east of Money. Preacher's house stands 50 feet right of the gravel road, with cedar and persimmon trees in the yard, but Big Millam drove the pickup in under the trees. He was bareheaded, carrying a 5-cell flashlight in his left hand, the .45 in his right. "Preacher, you got a boy from Chicago here?" "Yes, sir. I want to talk to him." "Yes, sir, I'll get him." Preacher led them to a back bedroom where 4 youths were sleeping in 2 beds. In one was Bobo Till and Simon Wright, Preacher's youngest son. Bryant had told Preacher to turn on the lights. Preacher had said they were out of order, so only the flashlight was used. The visit was not a complete surprise. Preacher testified he'd heard of trouble and that Sho had talked to his nephew about it. Bobo himself had been afraid. He'd wanted to go home the day after the incident. And the Negro girl in the party had urged that he leave. They'll kill him, she had warned. But Preacher's wife, Elizabeth Wright, had decided that the danger was being magnified. She had urged Bobo to finish your visit. I thought they might say something to him, but I didn't think they'd kill a boy, Preacher said. And it gets more graphic as it goes on. A lot of racial slurs, of course. But I want to really emphasize here, the things they did to Emmett Till. And then they did these to him. And I want you all to remember what we heard here, right?
When I'm doing oral histories, I'm not looking to judge the people I'm interviewing. I'm not looking to change the people I'm interviewing. I'm looking to make sure that the tape recorder is running. I'm there to try to encourage them to tell their truth, not to create it myself by badgering them in some direction that I want them to go, but to encourage them to tell their truth and share their memories. And so when things like that come up, she's not actually I had somebody tell me about committing a racial murder in great detail. The first interview I ever did, in fact.
Because there are some people out there who look at themselves and they see the main character. They look at themselves and they say to themselves, well, what I did was justified. And that's true of these guys, right? That's how they're able to sit down and do an interview like a year after killing a 14-year-old boy, going and abducting him in the middle of the night at gunpoint, and then torturing him to death. And they go to the paper and they tell the whole story. This entire story in this magazine is based on their testimony. And in their testimony, they describe wrapping barbed wire around his neck. They describe what they did to him. But part of what they do in telling this story is they seek to justify it as much as possible, right? And that's the testimony that then Matt Walsh goes, well, it had to have happened this way. That's it. And Matt Walsh is just over here going like, well, he kind of deserved it, though.
He told her she didn't need to be afraid and explained, quote, I've been with white women before. Emmett Till did not leave the store until one of his friends entered and forcefully removed him. So this was, according to her, an attempted sexual assault, not just in advance.
When Matt Walsh says this was an attempted sexual assault, there is nothing in any account. The FBI went over this case. No mention within their case about any hands being laid on that woman.
Now, these facts are obviously not flattering for Emmett Till, and for what it's worth.
And this is what I find fascinating. He then says these facts. Nothing in the factual record supports what he just said.
This behavior would not be out of character for the Till family. I think it's worth noting, Emmett's father was named Lewis Till. He enlisted in the Army during World War II to avoid going to prison for domestic violence. But Lewis Till's behavior did not change overseas. He was court-martialed for the murder of an Allied civilian during the Italian campaign, as well as the rape of 2 pregnant Italian women. Ultimately, he was found guilty and hanged. And incidentally, he had been incarcerated at the same military prison as the American poet Ezra Pound, who was jailed for treason. Pound even wrote a verse about Lewis Till saying, Till was hung yesterday for murder and rape with trimmings. Now, of course, the fact that Emmett Till's father was a domestic abuser and a rapist does not by itself demonstrate that Emmett Till did anything wrong. But, if we're just being logical about it, it makes it more likely that he would engage in similar conduct and take into.
How does it make it more likely? Matt, how does it make it more likely? What does this have to do with Emmett Till? Well, it has nothing to do with Emmett Till. Unless you are a eugenicist and a racist, like Matt Walsh. Right? Like, this is him saying, well, obviously Emmett Till must have gotten the rape gene from his dad. It's some, like, classic, like, sins of the father are the sins of the son type bullshit. Like, it is truly just such a heinous thing to say.
Together with Bryant's testimony, it's obviously context that makes her claim more credible, though still not.
Yeah, also very well worth pointing out, Avalon of Babylon, like, if he was hung in, like, 1945, that would have meant, like, he was deployed when Emmett Till was, like, 2.
None of us can ever know for sure what really happened in that store that day. I mean, we really don't know for sure. But the major lie about Emmett Till is what happened many years after his death. And the claim from the left and the media and activists is that Bryant later recanted her allegations that Emmett Till had physically assaulted her. They say that Bryant admitted in her dying years that she made the whole thing up, and she feels really bad about it. This is a core part of the story, and here's ABC repeating that claim. Listen.
We're coming.
Reverend Wheeler Parker says that his Bible tells him to forgive. And he says that's what he's doing here.
Thank you.
Taking an overnight train to Mississippi with his wife, trying to make peace.
Oh my goodness.
With the murder of his cousin by a clan of racists.
If you dwell on it, you'll come out of it injured.
Nearly 70 years ago to this day. This is where the white woman who worked here claimed that his 14-year-old cousin had grabbed her, put his hands around her waist, and then told her he had slept with white women before. It was all over the daily papers with quotes from a young Wheeler Parker calling 21-year-old Carolyn Bryant a pretty lady, interviews he says he never gave. Bryant and her husband Roy owned the store. In 2007, she told a book writer that she lied, and then she died in 2023, never apologizing to the black families.
What you should notice about all these stories is how definitive they are. All the official versions of the Emmett Till story make the claim that beyond a shadow of a doubt, Bryant admitted she was wrong. Pretty much everyone accepts this version of events to the point that just a couple of years ago, black activists tried to have the elderly woman thrown in prison. At the time, she was in her 80s and in failing health. But they didn't care. They went all the way to a grand jury, which rejected their claims. Watch.
Well, a grand jury in Mississippi today declined to indict the white woman whose accusations set off the lynching of Emmett Till nearly 70 years ago. Carolyn Bryant Dunham, now 88, initially claimed that Till made unwanted advances towards her at her family's grocery store. It led to the brutal torture and lynching of the 14-year-old. The prosecutor said the grand jury found insufficient evidence to charge Dunham.
Here's just a few of the top comments.
I mean, it is worth noting, by the way, that back in 2022, they actually found the warrant that was initially sworn for Bryant's arrest. Specifically, the warrant charging her, Carolyn Bryant Dunham, in his kidnapping and murder. It was unserved, but it does exist.
On that video to give you an idea of the public reaction. Quote, she's definitely going to hell. Quote, you got to be kidding me. Don't worry. God knows what you did. We know what you did. One day you'll receive what you deserve. May God hold Emmett in his hands. Quote, always angers me when the truly evil live to a ripe old age. Now, those are the least deranged quotes I can find. It's all out bloodlust over a dying woman in her 80s. And it's all based on a total fabrication. Bryant never recanted her allegation. The claim that she recanted was made by a historian named Timothy Tyson. He wrote a book in 2017 called The Blood of Emmett Till, in which he claimed that Bryant recanted her claims about Till in 2008, many decades after the incident. He recorded...
Oh, very interesting. Evidence indicates a woman, possibly Dunham, identified Till to the men who later killed him. The arrest warrant against Dunham was publicized at the time, but the LaFleur County Sheriff told reporters he didn't want to bother the woman since she had 2 young children to care for.
All this, all of his interviews for the book.
It's all lies, but you know they do have a sworn warrant for her arrest implicated in the murder that I want to really emphasize here. The murderers confessed to doing the murder. When they talk to the magazine in that interview I was quoting from, they confessed to doing the murder. This was after they were found not guilty and couldn't be prosecuted again for it. But I think it is worth noting here that she was never prosecuted for it, which in turn means that if she had started talking about it, or if she had been prosecuted for this, or if she had talked about how she had lied, even in her late years, she could have been prosecuted, which is all the motivation in the world to say, no, I never said that. Worth noting, she had very strong incentive to not publicly come forward as someone who, lied when there was a sworn warrant for her arrest.
Including his interviews with Bryant, standard practice for historians who are writing a book.
They would have said she was too old. That's not a defense. You guys realize that, like, if you're 100 years old and do a murder, you can still be prosecuted for the murder. Like, that's not a defense. We fucking prosecute Nazi SS soldiers that are like 100 years old. We'll do it to fucking racists who lie to get children killed.
So you'd think he'd be able to support his claims, especially a claim as explosive as that one. But it turns out that somehow Tyson's transcripts and audio recordings did not capture this bombshell admission. The FBI opened an investigation into Tyson's claims, since it would obviously be relevant to a criminal proceeding, even if the statute of limitations had expired, and they found no support for it whatsoever. This is from the Washington Post. The article is from 2021. Quote, the Justice Department has closed the latest federal investigation into the 1955 lynching of Emmett Till in rural Mississippi. Federal authorities reopened the case 3 years ago after a new book reported that Bryant had denied in an interview that Till had made any advances. In theory, that could have meant she lied in decades-old court proceedings. Justice Department officials said Monday that when the FBI questioned Bryant about these allegations, about these alleged statements to the book's author, she said she did not make them, and the author's interview tape and transcripts do not show her making such statements. The book said Bryant told Tyson that Till had not come on to her sexually, a disclosure that directly contradicted her testimony 6 decades earlier, when she told a jury that Till grabbed her by the waist and uttered obscenities. In a statement, Justice Department said the FBI was unable to confirm Tyson's assertion that Donham had recanted her prior testimony. When agents interviewed her, she denied ever recanting and provided no new information, Justice Department's statement said. Authorities concluded there was insufficient evidence to prove that she ever told the professor that any part of her testimony was untrue. Although the professor represented that he had recorded 2 interviews with her, he provided the FBI with only 1 recording, which did not contain any recantation.
Now, this is true, but not really these days. They let old people go because it would cost the state too much to care for them. No, they do that in very rare cases with people who've been in prison for a long time. They aren't going to just be like, well, you're over 100 years old, you can go on murder sprees. No, stop it. Stop being silly. Like, if that were the case, we'd have like a weird reverse RoboCop situation going on, where like the crime gangs like armed up children in RoboCop because RoboCop couldn't shoot kids. They would just be like arming up like all the elderly, strapping them up to do crimes. It just no. But also worth noting that while there isn't a audio recording of Emmett Till's accuser recanting, this is what the interviewer says. Tyson, quote, all right. In his book, The Blood of Emmett Till, Tyson wrote about Donham's memoir recounting the story she told at the trial using imagery about the classic Southern racist horror movie of the Black Beast rapist. But her testimony that Till had grabbed her around the waist and uttered obscenities, she now told me, that part's not true. Tyson said the recordings of his interviews with Donham are now in the hands of the FBI, which is re-examining Till's killing. Quote, it is true that that part is not on tape because I was setting up the tape recorder, Tyson said. He said when Donham began to mutter something about, quote, they're all dead now anyway, He snatched up his notebook and began taking notes, which the FBI has since subpoenaed. He shared a photo of the notes with the Clarion Ledger. They read, "That part wasn't true 50 years ago. I just don't remember. Nothing that boy ever did could justify what happened to him." And if you want to see a picture of the notes in question, here they are from the interview. These are contemporaneous with the day the interview happened. So, I don't know. Seems pretty weird that this is like the attempted fabrication from an evil journalist, and it has contemporaneous evidence for exactly what he said happened. Good old yellow pad. I'm not even sure that that is yellow paper. That might genuinely just be yellowed by time. Or maybe the lighting is yellowish. I don't know. Matt Walsh here is just really fishing for something to be off about the Emmett Till story in a way that like benefits white supremacists. It's truly disgusting.
A transcript of Tyson's other interview also did not contain the alleged recantation, officials said. Separately, NBC News reported that, quote, "But Dunham denied to federal investigators that she lied in her testimony, a source of knowledge of the case said, and there were inconsistencies with statements made by Tyson." So to recap, to this day, they're lying to us about what the woman alleged Emmett Till did to her. Well,
again, the allegation here really just seems, well, he was no angel and he had it coming. Like that, even if we grant everything that Matt Walsh is saying is true, which is a big ask, but even if you grant it, it really just boils down to Emmett Till, a 14-year-old child, really had it coming.
Lying by claiming the woman recanted her claim. She didn't. And they're burying a lot of information about the case, about Emmett Till, including the fact that his father was a rapist.
They're burying all the information. No, they're not. Like, I'm so sick of this line of argument from conservatives. The idea that, like, oh, well, they're hiding it from you. It's like, they're not hiding. No one's hiding anything from anybody. You're just not curious about it and have never bothered to look it up. That's the problem. Nobody has hid anything from you. You just lack the curiosity to go seek out the information. Like, if you were interested about the case of Emmett Till, you could just Google information. You could go to your local library and check out some books about it. You could, like, go look up the entire original confession article, like I did. Like, you could do a wide variety of different things in order to get more information about this. No one is hiding Emmett Till's dad's history. It's just not relevant to Emmett Till's story and what happened to him.
And with all that in mind, you have to wonder if they're telling the truth about any.
Also, again, who is they? He is never clarified. Who is they? Who are they telling the truth? Who? The allegation that, like, just everything that claims to be factual is lying to you, this is just like a core component of fascist education. Like, that's all that's happening here. He's teaching his audience to be stupid, to be docile, and to just believe that information isn't available to them because they have hidden it. And we all know who they are. Exactly, Avalon of Babylon. Typically, someone like Matt Walsh alleges that it's the Marxists in academia, or the Judeo-Bolsheviks, even, if you want to go full Nazi with it. Alleging a conspiracy of, like, communist Jews who control the world to, like, facilitate true information being hidden from you. Cultural Marxist is another label that has been really gaining steam in recent years. But it all comes down to folks like this. When they make these vague allegations of they are hiding the truth from you, it usually is vague on purpose so that the listener can just insert whichever conspiratorial group they have been radicalized against. Maybe it's the Masons or the Knights Templar or, like, some kind of other group. It's left vague on purpose, but most of the time, guys like Matt Walsh are in bed with the anti-Semites.
Aspect of this particular story. I mean, once they're willing to fabricate important details in order to create a myth, for the purposes of launching the civil rights movement, then there's...
Oh, maybe in this case, the they is just black people. Black people lied about Emmett Till to launch the civil rights movement. And again, to be clear here, Matt Walsh is saying that if, assuming everything was true about the case of Emmett Till, about like him, he touched her and like made like a sexual advance towards her, and then she was not interested, that somehow justifies him being like strangled with barbed wire and thrown into the river, right? Like, as if the entirety of the civil rights movement was dependent upon Emmett Till being like morally pure. What happened to Emmett Till was horrific. It was horrific on its own, on the face of it. Even if you grant Matt Walsh's story, which you have no reason to do, it would still be horrific.
No reason to trust anything they say about it. Now, does that mean that his killing was justified? No, obviously not. It was a brutal murder. We know that. There's really no disputing that. But the popular narrative...
Man, if you guys don't get angry about a story about someone being like strangled, a child being strangled with barbed wire and drowned, like, I don't know, like people should be angry about a story like that.
Narrative about this case leaves out important details and blatantly lies about others. And there's no disputing that either. Which makes you wonder about, what else about the story they aren't telling us. Nothing about the story, or any of these kinds of stories, can be taken on faith anymore.
It wasn't taken on faith. They have photographs. They have contemporaneous testimony. They have what are you talking about? Oh, I found some apparent inconsistencies, therefore everything about history is a lie. Okay. I mean, I guess. Maybe history isn't the field you should be studying, Matt.
Doesn't mean they're all wrong. Any of these kinds of stories you learned in school, you should go back again and check. You cannot assume that any of them are entirely true, and many of them might be entirely wrong. And in fact, lynchings in general are one of the most inflammatory aspects of American history, and therefore nobody wants to be honest about them. There's a hysteria about lynchings that led to a federal anti-lynching bill just a few years ago, if you remember that. Even though no black person has been lynched in this country at all in living memory, white people have certainly been attacked for their skin color, as we saw at the top of the show. But there have been no anti-black lynchings at all in many, many decades.
This is just a lie. This is just absolutely, positively a lie. Also, he's about to get into some really infuriating territory where he talks about, like, actually, we don't even know how racialized lynching was in America. And, like, we actually know exactly how racialized lynching was in America because they made fucking postcards and sold them to commemorate lynchings. I'm not going to show them because they're literally just pictures of lynchings.
And, there's this idea that if you object to any of the propaganda about lynching, then you must endorse the murder of innocent black people. But that's obviously not true. And all that matters is the truth. That's all we're saying about all these stories. What actually happened? What is the truth? You're saying some things that aren't true. I want to know what the actual truth is. That's all. Now, the popular narrative about lynching today is that it was a form of murderous violence inflicted by white people on black people for racial reasons. Now, it's true, of course, that those kinds of lynchings have occurred in American history. Not any time recently, which is what made that anti-lynching bill so ridiculous, not to mention the fact that lynching was already very much illegal anyway. And yet even Tuskegee University, which is a historically black university, admits that between 1882 and 1968, and this is according to their tally, more than 27% of lynching victims were white. Now, if lynching was a form of racial violence, then why would a significant percentage of the victims be white?
Hey, just out of curiosity, what were the percentages of black victims? And what exactly was the percentage of, the population that was black versus population of the country that was white? Maybe it's the fact that, like, disproportionately African Americans were lynched exponentially more often than white folks were. Just as a thought, like, the idea that, like, America's just built different, we don't do lynchings anymore. Like, we're not built different. And people in other countries still do lynchings. Lynchings still happen in America. Like, there is a story out of North Carolina recently, dealing with a girl, Juliana I'm gonna not pronounce the last name right, Nazita, who went missing and was found hanging from a tree 11 days after she disappeared. Could that have been just like a whoopsie-daisy accident? I guess, maybe, but that'd be one hell of an accident. Be like 12,000 steps that would have had to accidentally happen for that to occur. I don't know. It's, to me, this argument like, oh, well, lynchings weren't racialized. Here is a real newspaper clipping. All right, this is from the Jim Crow Museum. So they have an entire section of their website dedicated to lynching picnic. Question: I keep hearing people say that the word picnic is related to lynchings of black people in America. Is it true or not? Over the years, there have been some debates on the origins of the word picnic and its connection to lynching. Fact checkers from Reuters, PolitiFact, and other authors have verified that the term picnic did not originate from the lynching spectacles of black men in the United States. David Pilgrim, the founder and director of the Jim Crow Museum, wrote an article in 2004 which stated the etymology of the word picnic does not suggest racist or racial overtones. Picnic was originally a 17th century French word, picnic. Its meaning was similar to today's meaning, a social gathering where each attendee brings a share of the food. While it is true that the word picnic did not originate from a form of lynching, pick a N-word to lynch, numerous lynching scenes were social gatherings where people shared food, laughed, and celebrated. In fact, cursory research on the term lynching picnic reveals several primary sources for reports on such events. And one such report here: women, children turn lynching into picnic. White Southern womanhood steps down to revel at scene. 100 bullet holes. Afro reader gives first eyewitness account. From Tarboro, North Carolina. The scene of the gruesome lynching of Oliver Moore, who was taken from the county jail, carried away into the woods, strung up to a tree, and riddled with bullets, was turned into a veritable picnic ground when men, women, and children, intoxicated with the spirit of race prejudice and mob violence, surged around the horrible sight, played jokes, and made merry as the blood from multiple wounds dripped from the suspended body of the victim. This was not an unusual event. In fact, this is what then led to the creation of lynching postcards. This has a long and terrible history.
The answer is that historically, lynching was a form of mob justice. In the vast majority of cases, the victim, white or black, or any race, was accused of committing a serious crime. Now, often, we can't know exactly how often, but they were indeed guilty of committing the crime. The important point is that lynching was...
How would you know that? Matt Walsh, how would you know that? Like, if they are in prison or have been merely accused of a crime, that implies they haven't gone through the justice system. They haven't actually been, like, able to defend themselves, able to present evidence in their defense. So what you're saying is, well, I imagine that they were guilty of it, and so that makes it a little bit more okay. Matt Walsh is just basically personifying the mob bloodthirsty mentality. It's genuinely insane. It is insane to see a man just go, you know what? Actually, racial lynchings, justified. Justified. You know, most of them were guilty. I have no facts on my side. I just feel like it's true.
Was not an exclusively racial form of violence. Often it had nothing to do with race at all. I mean, we can confidently say that most of the 27% of white victims, assuming that percentage is not an undercount, which is a very massive assumption.
Hey, Matt, like in the world you're envisioning, there would have been a more accurate account of how many victims were not white? Like, Matt's like, well, obviously white people were undercounted for some reason. But in like the slave era South, or even in the like pre-Jim Crow South, you're saying that like the stats on black lynchings would be even more accurate? Like, it's so bizarre. Like, the fact is, if you stop and you break down any aspect of his argument, it doesn't make a lick of sense. It's just disgusting hatred. Here we are. National crimes, the new national data set of lynchings in the United States, 1883 to 1941. Oh, there's a long data collection. There's a long sociological tradition of studying lynchings in the South, dating back to the lynching era itself. Ida B. Wells was the first to use lynching statistics collected by the Chicago Tribune to show that even taking the stated motivations of lynch mobs at face value, which is what Matt Walsh is doing, by the way, by saying that they're justified lynchings, rape and sexual assault were not the primary motivations for lynching, as lynching apologists had claimed. And hey, look at that. Matt Walsh is also claiming. How about them apples? Monroe work in 1913 took Wells's analysis a step further, showing that although around 20 to 25% of lynchings of black men were ostensibly about rape, only 2% of blacks incarcerated for major offenses were charged with rape. And many groups of European immigrants were incarcerated for rape at much higher levels, suggesting that whites were afforded the protections of the legal system when accused of rape, whereas blacks were not. Researchers at the Tuskegee Institute and the early NAACP under W.E.B. Du Bois began to collect lynching statistics in the early 1900s. And you can see one of the fruits of their labor right here on this map, which, kind of gives you an idea of where a lot of lynchings took place across America. Until Tolnay and Beck in 1995 undertook their project to validate lynching statistics for the American Southeast, the NAACP, Chicago Tribune, and Tuskegee Institute were the best sources of data, both nationally and for the Southeast. Tolnay and Beck showed that these original data sets had significant errors and created a new data set consisting only of lynchings that they could verify with local newspapers. This data set has since been used in a diverse array of research on lynching in the American South. Our data collection is meant to extend the Tolnay-Beck data set beyond the 10 original southern states in the hopes of spurring lynching research in other regions and at a national scale. To ensure similarity to Tolnay and Beck's data, we follow the common academic definition of lynching as 1, an extrajudicial killing, 2, motivated or justified by reference to justice or tradition, and 3, committed by 3 or more people. Loosely following Tolnay and Beck's original strategy, we began with the Chicago Tribune and NAACP inventories and attempted to confirm those lynchings with local papers. Unlike Tolnay and Beck, we did not have access to the Tuskegee database. Also, unlike Tolnay and Beck, we supplemented these contemporaneous data sets with those published by historians. We then used 9 searchable online newspaper archives to locate local news accounts that could confirm or disconfirm the lynchings in these data sets. For each lynching recorded in any of our source data sets, we searched online newspaper archives for local papers to confirm the lynching. If we did not find a paper within the same state reporting the lynching, we considered it unconfirmed and it does not appear in our data set. In many cases, when we were not able to confirm a lynching, we were able to get a paper trail that suggests how erroneous lynching event made it into the original lynching inventories. So, there you have it. When combined with the new Tolnay-Beck data, we recorded 4,467 total victims of lynching from 1883 to 1941. Of these victims, 4,027 were men, 99 were women, and 341 were of unknown gender, although likely male. 3,265 were black, 1,082 were white, 71 were Mexican or of Mexican descent, and 38 were American Indian, 10 were Chinese, and 1 was Japanese. So, yeah, the overwhelming majority of these were African Americans. But, you know, I suppose if you're like Matt Walsh and you just want to imagine whatever numbers you want, you don't need data.
But we can assume that they were not lynched, for racial reasons. Does it make sense then to assume that every black victim was lynched for racial reasons? Of course it doesn't. In a certain significant percent of cases, they were lynched for the same reason whites were lynched, because they had committed or were accused of committing a crime. And lynching was not invented in 1882, by the way. It had been used all...
Yeah, except we, have a legal system, and just operating outside of the legal system to kill people you think need killing isn't generally an acceptable way of going about business. Matt Walsh, in his pro-lynching arguments, incredible that is what's happening, seems to be arguing in favor of just killing people who need killing, and I don't think that is a road anyone should be going down.
All through the early history of the United States and before that. It happened during colonial times too. We don't have any data, as far as I could find, on the racial makeup of the victims in the early 19th century and prior to that. But there's good...
He's like, well, we didn't invent lynching, but lynching was really a form of justice when you think about it. And, all these people had been accused of crimes for the most part. And
reason to suspect that a large number of them, perhaps even a majority, perhaps even a large majority, were white. And this wasn't just mob justice. Sometimes it was. Sometimes mobs of angry townsfolk banded together to kill some alleged wrongdoer. And sometimes they would do that even though they had a court system and jails that could have brought the alleged criminal to justice in a, civilized and constitutional way. But sometimes lynching was less a case of mob justice and more a case of frontier justice. Large swaths of the American territory through much of its early history didn't really have a functioning court system, so there wasn't much you could do with murderers, rapists, and cattle thieves in those cases, but execute them quickly, and sometimes they would leave their bodies hanging from a tree as a warning to anyone who might think of committing similar crimes. It was brutal and ugly, but sometimes brutal and ugly options were the only ones available.
Except they weren't, right? That's the thing. In a lot of cases of lynching, they broke people out of prison so that they could go and kill them. In a lot of cases, it was the only option. No, if you were capable of capturing them to kill them, you were capable of capturing them and bringing them to prison. What the fuck are you talking about, Matt? This is genuinely some apologia for mass murder. It's crazy.
Maybe you can think of a better way to deal with a murderer if you're living in a frontier town and there's no court system and no jail, and you've got someone who just murdered someone or is a rapist. What are you supposed to do with that person? A lot of internet companies claim...
Take them to the nearest jail. What do you mean? Look, that kid was caught stealing. What do? We don't have a jail nearby. Guess we gotta cut off his hands so he can't steal no more. What are you talking about? Talking about these places across the United States as if there weren't actual prisons or jails or any kind of legal system at all. It is crazy. This idea that it was just impossible for people to access the legal system. It literally was not.
Their services are free, which is interesting because they're some of the richest companies in human history. So where exactly is all that money coming from? The answer, of course, is your information, your habits,
Man, I really hope, genuinely, whatever company he's about to try and sell you guys on, maybe consider sending that company this video and ask why the hell they're advertising on a video that is arguing in favor of lynching.
Interest, your behavior. The product was never the app. The product is you, the person using it. Every click, search, and website visit gets collected, analyzed, packaged, and sold. Most people know this is happening. They've just gotten used to it. It's one of the reasons I use ExpressVPN. When I'm online, my internet provider doesn't need a detailed record of everything I'm doing. And data brokers certainly don't need another piece of information to add to the profile that they're already building on me or know more about my habits than my own family does. ExpressVPN routes my internet activity through...
Like, why ExpressVPN, why the fuck are you advertising your product after, like, a guy just finished talking about how actually doing lynchings was totally justified and, in fact, in some cases, the only moral thing to do? Good God.
Secured encrypted servers and helps keep what I do online private. It's simple. One click and it's on. I use it across my devices and never have to think about it again. It's exactly how privacy tools should work because privacy online matters just as much as in the physical world. If you care about having a little more control over your own information online, it's worth checking out. Find out how you can get up to 4 extra months by scanning the QR code on screen. Click the link in the description box below or go to expressvpn.com/WalshYT. Again, scan the QR code or visit expressvpn.com/WalshYT to find out how you can get up to 4 months free. Again, we have a story that is much more complicated than the one told today by the media and the education system. Lynching.
The complication you introduced is irrelevant to the actual crime that ended Emmett Till's life. The complication you are introducing is, oh, well, maybe he really did deserve to be strangled with barbed wire and drowned at gunpoint. Maybe he really did deserve that at the age of 14 years old, because maybe he did, like, he tried to, like, play some game on a 21-year-old lady. And, like, there's a lot of evidence to say that that didn't happen, but you're doing a lot of maybes, a lot of what ifs. So, like, I don't know, Matt. Do you think that, like, in our world, you should be strangled with barbed wire and drowned if you make someone feel uncomfortable? Because I don't think Matt Walsh wants to live in that world. Least ways he shouldn't. Dude makes me hella uncomfortable.
Things happened for hundreds of years. A huge number of them had nothing to do with race. Some of them were actually justified and necessary. Some of them were not. Some of them were racial killings. Some of them were not. We can't possibly know what the percentages look like. We can't break it down into a pie chart.
We can, actually, because we have contemporaneous sources to cross-check and verify. That's why we have the numbers you tried to reference earlier and then said, well, it's likely an undercount. Like, but only when it comes to white people for some reason. Like, historians actually did bother to look into it, Matt, and did bother to cross-check and verify the cases of lynching that they were able to do that with, which obviously isn't going to represent 100% of all lynchings that have ever happened, but it is going to create an interesting cross-section of data that we can then extrapolate from in potentially useful ways.
And so instead, the popular narrative has simplified the pie so that the racial killings are the whole pie. And
no, actually, because the thing is, when you're talking about the civil rights movement, the death of Emmett Till, the murder of Emmett Till, is a key component to learn about. Most history classes in the elementary through high school range are not going to have in-depth courses on lynchings in America. You will get a brief overview, maybe a couple of times throughout your entire education if you stop at high school. If you're actually interested in history and you go to college and you take courses in American history, however, they will give you a full breakdown of what lynching was like in America. They will teach you that stuff. You will be assigned to read books that talk about the nuances of this, because information is, in fact, more complicated than what is taught to elementary schoolers. It is more complicated than what is taught to high schoolers. But you actually have to be curious enough to seek out that information. It's not all being hidden from you. It exists. You just have to be curious enough and motivated enough to go look it up. God damn.
Now, lynching has become a symbol of anti-black racism. But historically, the concept of lynching...
Are white people in apartheid government the reason why hundreds of millions of people are poor on the African continent? I wouldn't say white people in apartheid. I would say colonialism. The colonial system that is designed to extract wealth from the African continent to a variety of different countries around the world, and has found new and novel ways to do that over the course of the last century, would be responsible for that.
Did not have that automatic racial connotation. It's only relatively recently that the noose has become this like racially charged symbol. But it should...
I'm sorry.
Not have that automatic racial connotation. It's only relatively recently that the noose has become this like racially charged symbol.
I mean, I guess you can say that if you don't think that there was a racial tinge, a racial element to lynching in America. Because if you did realize that there was a very definitive racial element to lynching in America, then saying something like the noose has only recently become racialized in America would be a very stupid thing to say. Like, he has to willfully make himself stupider as he talks in order to avoid the obvious contradictions in the things he says.
But it should tell you something that literally every prominent case of a racist noose being left somewhere to intimidate black people at any point this century has turned out to be a hoax. All of them have been hoaxes. And maybe that should tell you something. One of the most...
They literally haven't all been hoaxes. This idea that they are is insane. Like, for example, this case in Michigan from a couple years ago. Michigan man accused of leaving nooses and racist notes is charged with hate crimes. Kenneth Pillen, 61, also called Starbucks employees and left racist messages, federal authorities said. Or you have this case. Dozens of nooses have shown up on U.S. construction sites. The culprits rarely face consequences. Black workers make up only 6% of the sector, have found many of those 55 nooses reported at 40 work sites since 2015, a post-analysis has found. Because, again, this is a thing that happens. And guess what? They're not, like, those workers at construction sites, they're not getting massive payouts because there's, like, a noose there. They aren't planting it themselves, and they're gonna, like, have a huge payday about it, which is what Matt Walsh tends to, imply here. Or, hey, like, people wouldn't just be openly racist anymore in America. This is from 2014.
Fight. Neighbors in a South Florida neighborhood angry because a man is flying a KKK flag right in his front yard.
And Adam, that defiant man says he has every right to fly that flag no matter what his neighbors say.
Team 6 reporter Ari Odzer is live in West Boca with the latest reaction here. Ari.
Well, Adam, nobody's arguing that Kelsey Hayes doesn't have the right to fly that KKK banner over his trailer here. Of course, his rights to freedom of speech and expression are enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, but that doesn't mean his neighbors have to like it.
You're a pig. You're a pig.
What a pause screen right there. All right. But, like, this isn't an uncommon thing for people to use nooses this way. Black Tyson Foods employee says harassment with nooses and castration threats left him fearful for his life. He claims he was subjected to racial discrimination so horrific the 62-year-old mechanic lived in fear of leaving work each day, fearing he would be followed and killed by his white colleagues, according to court documents reviewed by The Independent. In a federal civil rights suit filed Monday, Alvin Clark, the only black worker on his team, says the bigotry eventually got so bad he began to staying in area hotels rather than his own home, so that he was not located by Tyson employees and murdered. Among other things, Clark's complaint contends he was passed over multiple times for a more desirable position because he was allegedly told by white higher-ups, "Ain't no N-word getting the job," that a supervisor hung a noose in front of him, that a group of managers pulled knives and vowed to castrate him, and that he survived an attempted shooting by one of his shift leaders only because the man's gun jammed. Clark's white managers laughed and did nothing, according to the complaint. But no, that nooses would never happen. People in America, they're not racist anymore. This is from last year. Pennsylvania bar shares photo of customer in KKK costume with noose. Don't they look great? Pennsylvania bar posted a picture of one of its customers in a Ku Klux Klan costume with a noose as part of a post showing customers' costumes for a Halloween party. The Redneck Bar and Grill in Middleburg, Snyder County posted the photo in a slideshow on Saturday saying, "Here are some of our customers who came to the party. Don't they look great?" But no, these cases of nooses showing up, all fake. All fake, apparently.
Powerful scenes, for my money, in the miniseries Lonesome Dove, one of the great...
Matthew Callanales writes, "Yeah, I remember being at a diner and my dad seeing the workers spit into the coffee of an interracial couple." Yep.
Pieces of...
I still remember being like 16, and there was a Cheerios commercial that had an interracial couple in it, and people on the internet freaking the fuck out that there was an interracial couple. It was an eye-opening experience for me as a teenager. Seeing people just get so hateful over an interracial couple in a commercial. Like, yeah, I think it was this commercial in particular from 2013.
Mom.
Yes, honey?
Dad told me that Cheerios is good for your heart. Is that true?
Says here that Cheerios has whole grain oats that can help remove some cholesterol, and that's heart healthy.
Jim? Like, the amount of hatred on that commercial was insane. That was cute. It was cute. But people got infuriated over that.
A new advertisement featuring a family and a box of Cheerios is sparking controversy. It has nothing to do with the product or even what's said. So why all the backlash? Our Alex Hobson joins us now in studio to explain. Alex?
What it boils down to is this. The negativity circling this Cheerios ad is all because of the cast of characters, an interracial couple and their mixed-race kid. The commercial starts with her, a curly-haired cutie talking to her mom, a white woman, about Cheerios.
Dad told me that Cheerios is good for your heart. Is that true?
She runs off, and then you see her dad, a black man covered in Cheerios. The joke is she wanted to make his heart healthy, but the reality is this ad that ends in love has generated a lot of hate.
I was a bit surprised and a bit disappointed, I'd say.
The social media blowback of the biracial family got so bad, General Mills decided to disable all of its YouTube comments, which, according to Adweek, devolved into references of Nazis, troglodytes, and racial genocide. Sajeev Varkey, a USF associate professor of marketing, was blown away.
I really can't figure out what they found objectionable to this.
Varkey says in advertising, children can often trigger more intense emotions. So it may have been seeing the little girl of mixed race that elicited the strong response in some people. But in 2013, a time when interracial marriage has been legal now for decades, Varkey points out this ad is reality. And he hopes other companies don't shy away from it because of what he calls a small sliver of society.
There's a little sliver, and this doesn't represent the audience for General Mills.
The makers of Cheerios are trying to look past the controversy. In a statement to ABC News, they wrote, quote, "Consumers have responded positively to our new Cheerios ad. At Cheerios, we know there are many kinds of families, and we celebrate them all." So we want to know what you think. We've gone ahead and posted the ad in its entirety on our website, abcactionnews.com. You can leave us your thoughts under the comments tab.
Yeah. Legal for decades to interracial marriage. But Despite it being legal for decades, conservatives are still big mad over it forever, apparently. But let's wrap this up.
Of television or film ever made. But one of the most powerful scenes is when Tommy Lee Jones's character lynches a group of thieves and murderers. I'm
sorry. Oh God. All right.
For my money, in the miniseries Lonesome Dove, one of the great pieces of television or film ever made. But one of the most powerful scenes is when Tommy Lee Jones's character lynches a group of thieves and murderers, including one of them who was a former friend. All of them were white. Now, it's fiction, obviously, but also a pretty fair reflection of historical reality, a pretty fair reflection of what lynching looked like and why it was done in many, many cases all throughout American history. But importantly, 35 years ago when the show came,
I cannot believe he dedicated a 20-minute long segment of his show to talk about how cool and awesome and just lynchings are. Like, I know we're in like the final seconds of this, but like I'm genuinely like just, oh well, I saw a movie where like a lynching was really cool once. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, are you for real right now? I've seen a lot of movies with sword fights in them. And are you trying to be like, well, yeah, cutting off hands is cool as shit because it happened in Star Wars? What the fuck are you talking about?
Came out 35, 40 years ago, whatever it was. Nobody flagged the lynching scene as some kind of historical whitewashing. It looked normal to the audience because that's how everyone understood the concept of lynching until, I would argue, the last like 20 years or so. And that's when the propaganda went into overdrive.
Jesus. The anti-lynching propaganda. I don't know how to interpret this other than Matt Walsh like really trying hard to argue that he should be allowed to lynch people. I don't think there's any other way to really interpret this. It's really fucked up. What's the comment section? Oh God, what is it like? Let's see, a lie can travel the world before the truth puts its pants on. It's supportive of Matt Walsh, of course. Let's see. The truth has no defense against a fool determined to believe a lie. In the 70s, in Stillwater, Oklahoma, at the high school, there was a black Marvin Thames who would go up to white girls, grab them, and actually rub and hunch on us in the hallways. We were told to ignore him, and no actions were ever taken to protect us.
It's evil creeps like Walsh that make me keep doing this work, tired as I am.
Yeah, truly, if we do not put on our pants and get to work organizing, folks like Matt Walsh will unfortunately rule us. And I cannot abide that. Okay, like truly, and I do mean this. This is maybe one of the most vile comment sections I've ever seen in my life. So much of this is just people listing like, oh, here's a historical figure that deserved to be lynched and was, or hey, back in the 70s, we should have been lynching these black people. Like, it's genuinely deeply disturbing. It's a bunch of people talking about how they really want people to be lynched again. Oh, okay, here's one small island of sanity. Longtime fan here, but I think Walsh is blinded by his desire to equate the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s with the lies peddled by the media today. Carol Bryant is alleged to have said that Till only lightly flirted with her. However, after Till's brutal murder, she changed her account from innocent flirting to Till grabbing her by the waist and trying to cajole her into going out with him. I have my doubts on this with the fact that Till was only 14 and this type of behavior was way out of cultural norms, etc. It goes on and on. I respect Matt's opinion about much subject matter. However, he seems to have a blind spot regarding race relations. It is also worth noting, it's correct. Bryant changed her story pre-trial and post-trial. So, yeah, I would say, you know what, Matt Walsh fans who recognize that Matt Walsh may have a blind spot when it comes to race relations, hold on to that. Hold on to that idea and like seek to maybe look at where he might have a few other blind spots. He might have a couple other blind spots here. That was one of the good comments. Yeah, one of the good comments was just like pointing out that Matt Walsh really got this fucking wrong. But none of them seem to really be calling out the fact that like that he's like advocating for lynchings. This comment does end. Here's the thing though, even if it was true, and I don't think it amounts to sexual assault as Matt puts it, Emmett was held by gunpoint in the middle of the night, taken to a remote location, and brutalized in the worst of ways. His killers said they asked if he thought he was still their equal. Till said yes, and that's when they shot him in the head. This is their own info they gave in an interview. It's disgusting and vile in every way, and highlights the disproportionate reaction to alleged flirtation that was driven by racial animus. It's no wonder this moved the nation. It was grotesque. You acknowledge this, Matt, but you seem to close your eyes to its severity and implications. Which, like, you know what? I'm impressed. I am impressed that we even found one Matt Walsh viewer who is willing to be like, wait a minute, Matt. You being virulently pro-lynching, I can live with. But getting the facts wrong about this particular case, I cannot abide. There may still be hope for some people, sure. Anyway, if you got anything out of this... Oh, wait. Last point. Fuck Matt Walsh. If you got anything out of this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and please, for the love of God, leave a comment in my comment section, and do not siphon your soul away by going to Matt Walsh's comment section on this video. All right? Don't do it. Do not do it. Build something better in the comment sections to this video. All right? And get organized, folks, because folks like Matt Walsh are getting organized, and we need to be out organizing them. So join your local Dems, join your local DSA, make your local Dems more pro-working class, kick out those corporate Dems, make your DSA more effective. We can help you do that. Join our Discord, reach out to Gamergy for help joining your local DSA, reach out to Dragonfly for help joining your local Dems, and also consider joining Progressive Victory. We've got a link down below for that. You can get connected directly into campaigns across the country to help do door knocking, phone banking, text banking for leftist candidates all over the land. So go check that out. And last but not least, folks, go check out ImogeneOlivia.com. Gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. Check it out. It is comfortable, sexy lingerie. Go check it out. ImogeneOlivia.com. Link down in the description. And let's keep on going.
Riverboat Jack is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, dating, plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat.